welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. One of the things that's been dominating the news headlines over the last week or so has been all of the attention that people have thrust on the trucker convoy, which really isn't even about truckers at all. It's a temper tantrum by any reasonable metric. But there's been a lot of speculation as to why that convoy has received as much attention as it has. And one of the ideas that has been floated, which is categorically not true, is the idea that, well, there's not that much going on in politics these days. And it's the exact opposite that's true. And that's one of the things that we're here to talk about today, because while all of this has been going on, the province of Alberta has begun consultations with Albertans in regards to the new proposed curriculum. Now, we've covered that curriculum at length with a series of interviews with curriculum designers, with advocates, with parents, with teachers, and there's no question that the curriculum is fundamentally flawed. This is something that even Adriana LaGrange has admitted, because she's said that they're going to revisit parts of the curriculum that were extremely problematic. But there are a lot of other parts of the curriculum that are scheduled to be rolled out in the next year that are still very problematic. And it's those parts and the consultation process that we're here to talk about today. And it's been a while since we've done a panel, so that's what we're doing today. We are joined today by Dr. Angela Grace, who's been on the show before. She is an advocate, an activist, a psychologist who specializes in early childhood psychology stuffs, and I'm going to let you correct me on that because I just butchered it, Dr. Grace. We're also joined by Andrea Willman, who is a parent and a teacher. We're joined by Karen Green, who's a retired teacher, but who taught with K through 12 and who also has grandchildren that are going to potentially be exposed, have this curriculum inflicted on them. I'm not sure what the exact phrasing would be. We have returning to the show as well, Dustin Archibald, and we have another retired teacher, Lenora LeMay. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Yes,
there we go.
Thanks, Nate. Yep.
Thanks,
Good to be here.
So to start with, I'm just going to go in kind of sort of alphabetical order, just because that makes it manageable. So to start with, I know that almost everybody here has attended some of the consultation processes. So Andrea, I'm going to ask you to kick us off. And if you can kind of explain the broad strokes of what that process looked like, and then we'll get into the pros and cons after we've talked about that a little bit.
Okay, so just what it was like to show up?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
And what was the process?
Well, I found out about it through, I don't even know, probably through Dustin, and sharing it through the group, and I signed up. I went to one of the first ones, which would have been LA on a Monday. There was room for 120 people, but there was only 30 bodies, and about 20% of those were staff of the PR firm that were running it. So they had enough staff to run multiple breakout rooms, but we only had 2 because that's the number of people that we had. So 2 breakout rooms. The first one, you stayed with the same group the whole time, the same group of small people. We were tasked with talking about 4 to 6 language arts first. So making sure that it's a small conversation focused on 3 grades, 4, 5, 6, just LA. And then you switch and you have different facilitators, but the same people that you're having a conversation with. And then you do the K through 3. So Div 1, Div 2. Before you get into the breakout room, they had a 20-minute presentation, slideshow from the government talking about how awesome everything is and what they really think the government's going to achieve with their curriculum. And then they had a really weird question about how comfortable we are with the curriculum. And most of us called them out on that. And they were like, wait a minute, what do you mean comfortable? Do you mean I'm comfortable with how much I know, or I'm comfortable with what I know? Because I'm quite comfortable with how much I know about the draft, but I'm crazy uncomfortable with how that makes me feel, because it's not good. So we called them out on being a misleading question, and they were fair. And they were like, well, we didn't write the question. Sorry. We have to ask the question. And it was in teacher speak, that's an entrance slip and an exit slip. And you use it to gauge the effectiveness of a lesson or of a unit or of a different time frame. So you gather your information of self-reporting, how much you know about a topic, and then you have the kids rate it again at the end. And we get a lot of PD as teachers to write those questions properly to make sure that we're getting the data that we want, so that it's not skewed, so that we're not wasting everybody's time. So to be able to recognize a faulty question right off the bat was concerning, because that kind of question is very easily manipulatable. It's easy to manipulate something like that. And so we had our breakouts, and they asked the question again at the end as an exit, and it was like, whoa, that's not okay. So they registered that. And then the second time I went to the second one for PE and wellness, and Angela was there, and they asked the same questions again. So it's a very formulated process.
And Andrea, don't forget, throughout the whole process, we only had 2 questions to focus on. One, what are the positive things about this draft? So again, leading question. And then the second question was, what can be done to improve it? Well, throw it in a dumpster fire.
Not wrong.
Yeah. So the facilitators didn't quite know what to do with throw it in a dumpster fire, because there are no positives. Go ahead, Andrea.
My first one with LA, the first facilitator, she was really open to hearing that we needed to move from good to needed to be fixed quite quickly, that there was a very finite amount of good things to talk about. The second facilitator I had that night with language arts pushed a little bit harder and cut us off if we. So there was a couple of people who did have positive things to say about phonemic awareness and those kinds of things that that have had some positive feedback, but the conversation always flowed directly into these positives can't stand on an island. They can't be isolated as a positive, because the context in implementing those positives will drag it down into a dumpster fire, into a non-functioning roadmap that won't get us where we need it to go. And that second facilitator was like, oh, you're going negative. And we're like, yeah, we know. There's nowhere positive to take that. There's these little isolated awesome pieces that would really work well in a well-formulated scaffold with lots of scope and sequence draft, but that's not what we're working with here. And we're trying to tell you that. And then we came back to the group and everything was good. So the fact that people could be anonymous if they wanted to be was awesome. There was one participant in my first one that really wanted to stay anonymous, and she made it very clear that she came from a very small area and it was not in her best interest to have her name on her thoughts. So they just let her be participant, and she talked. We had media involved in my first one. So we had a CBC reporter with us, and if anybody had felt uncomfortable about that, they could have said so out loud, but they also could have back channeled to say quietly, please don't let this reporter listen in on us, and they would have taken her out, but nobody said it, so she stayed. And then the next one I went to, there was no reporter in the room, but they made the same thing, like, if there's a reporter, please let us know and then we'll address it, and that didn't happen. But I think they're doing the best they can as a PR firm to do the job they were hired to do. It's unclear what their job was, what perspective and what spin's going to be put on it. It's really unclear where that's going. But it was really professionally managed. And if we can see those reports afterwards, I think things will go well, but that's only if there's transparency.
Okay. Dr. Grace, what was your experience like?
Well, so first of all, when I went to sign up for them, they divided everything by subject, and they also divided all of the meetings by area in the province. Well, it just happened, I already had a meeting the night of the Calgary one, so I couldn't attend. And then I thought, to heck with it, I'm just going to show up. So I showed up at one for Northern Alberta, which of course ended up being with Andrea, which was awesome. So it was interesting because they did their little intro, and then they did their 20-minute propaganda, we're so amazing video. And it was interesting in watching the video that they really promoted financial literacy. Financial literacy got more airtime in the video than youth health and wellness. So I'm like, well, that was a very interesting propaganda video. And then we got into the feedback. And of course, I have a lot to say about the curriculum. So I started, and the facilitator muted me after a few minutes and said, oh, we need to make sure everybody else has a turn. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I went to the comment box and just put all my comments in. It's kind of funny. Some of the participants wrote in the comment box, no, we want to hear from Dr. Grace.
So I did. I can attest. They were like, no, I agree with Andrea, Angela and Andrea. And yeah.
So it was interesting. And the thing to know is we only got 20 minutes in our group. So yes, people got rounds to share, but we only had 20 minutes. And when you see the little, your group will be ending in 60 seconds pop up, it's kind of unnerving because there's more to say. So then we went to the second group, and Andrea, I'm sure, can attest to this. Our facilitator lost control over the group.
Not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way. No, the facilitator just, you could see I am not going to bother asking what's positive about this curriculum. And she just let us freeform talk. And so it was the second meeting the second group was more productive because we could just talk and communicate and share. And so that was really good. The thing that makes me nervous with these engagement sessions, like Andrea said, the first one she went to only had about 30 people. Ours only had about 25, and there were about 5 facilitators there. So still only about 20 people giving feedback. So it's a very, very, very small number attending these. And I initially thought, oh, I better stay in my area of specialization, which is, health and wellness. But I also have a lot to say about the other ones. And I'm also very tired. And just as a human being, I don't want to waste any more time on this when I've already said so much and being completely 100% ignored. So I think that's part of the problem with these engagement sessions is they're time limited. They're focused on one specific topic each evening, and they don't want you to talk about anything else. So it's very limited engagement. And I don't have, I, like every other Albertan, don't have time to be spending my evenings on a 2-hour Zoom meeting when I've already submitted letters and a report and a review and information. Like everything we're saying here has already been said so many times, and we've been ignored. So that's my concern. Now they're going to get this report from, maybe a couple hundred people that participate. Maybe, let's go big. Let's go 500. Okay. But it's also going only to the Minister of Education. And that worries me. Because where's the transparency, and what spin is the government going to put on this very important type of engagement? That's
clearly extensive engagement too. This is not a small PR firm.
No.
This is a large company.
And can we just add in all the unpaid female labor I've been doing since March 30th, 2021 for this curriculum on behalf of Albertans for the next 30 to 40 years? You're just, maybe I should submit an invoice. I don't know.
I would say you should. It's interesting that you bring up the attendance and the. I mean, Andrea, you even said yourself that you weren't sure where you found out about it. It would probably be Dustin, who I'm going to kick it to next. But it's fascinating to me, given how much attention the curriculum has gotten, how much negative feedback people have already provided. I mean, there's literally. In the preamble to the show, we were talking about the various different coffee mugs that exist because of how bad the curriculum is. So there's this whole other sub market that the horribleness of this thing has created. And so I find it fascinating that it seems like the awareness of these consultation sessions, which is unquestionably what they're going to be using to justify all of the not changes that they'll probably make, it seems to be so low on the radar. I mean, like, Andrea, you're somebody who's hyper engaged in this situation, and the fact that it almost slipped past you, I find myself wondering, how is it that the average Albertan who has kids or grandkids would look at this situation and go, "Oh, I knew about that." Dustin, what was your experience like, and how did you find out about it?
Well, I found out about it just because I follow the Alberta government on Facebook. So I don't like to because of all the garbage that they spew, but they did have this thing saying here at the information sessions. So I'm like, okay, if this is important. I posted to the Albertans Reject the Curriculum Draft Facebook group, and then it started spreading from there. My experience is the same for everybody else. It's not a very good process, and I don't have any faith that the feedback we give will be used for any beneficial purpose. One interesting thing that came out of it from the group that I was in is there was somebody from one of the divisions that is piloting one of the curriculum subjects, one of the very few that are piloting the subjects. And he said that Alberta Education asked them to provide them with any materials they develop for the curriculum so that they could disseminate that to any other districts that might need it. So obviously, Alberta Education does not have a plan for implementing this. They don't have any clue what they're doing. It's just, here you go, try it out, make the materials for us, and then we'll use them for everybody else in the province, which is not how you develop curriculum, right? That's just a ridiculous thing. The education experts develop the curriculum, and then the teachers are able to implement it and teach it, right? This is how it's supposed to work. So that's a bit ridiculous. I too ran into the issue with a vague question about, are you comfortable with this curriculum? And that's just a terrible question to be asking. When I was in the session, I said that this curriculum is garbage, and the facilitator said, okay, well, let's just come back to you. And then every time they came back to me, I said, well, this is another example of why this is a terrible curriculum. So eventually they stopped asking me questions because they knew what my answer was going to be. But from my perspective, it's important to go to these things, even if it's ignored, because the feedback still gets there, and it's better than having an empty seat. It's better to have somebody in there criticizing the curriculum, because then that feedback gets through. At the very least, it's not somebody sitting in that seat saying this is great.
Karen, you are a retired teacher. You have grandkids. What was your how much confidence did you have with your experience?
Well, I've been complaining and reacting ever since the beginning, with letters to my MLA and the minister, and I've been to 5 Have Your Say sessions of the old format, where you could just submit questions and you couldn't see what the other people were saying. And there is something that's the same between the old format and the new format, and that's that you have to sit through 20 minutes of promotional video first. So the government never misses a chance to tell you what you should be thinking before they ask you what you're thinking. So that part is the same.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, I don't
Bingo.
think anything's going to come out of it, because all along, every time we gave feedback, except for the survey where we don't know what happened to the feedback because it wasn't made public, but every time we gave feedback, we just got some kind of communication back saying, oh no, but the communication, the curriculum's really wonderful. So I'm kind of expecting that's what will happen this time.
I didn't feel gaslighted in the moment though, so that's new. Normally yes. I feel gaslighted live.
I mean, this comfortable question really, it's a fascinating thing to me, because it's as you've been talking, the only thing that I keep going back to is imagine if somebody held a focus group asking, what do you think about the Sean Chu situation? We want to know what sort of remediation or what people should do. And then opening it with, are you comfortable with Sean Chu being elected? I feel like there's a lot of people who would take exception to that. So and then to follow that up with a 20-minute video, was it at least like a well-produced video?
No.
It was a PowerPoint.
Yeah, it was just
somebody reading a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Was it better than the PowerPoints that we've seen for the online what is that, tutoring?
No, I would say it's actually worse because the person was stuttering a lot and they couldn't actually get the words out that they were supposed to. So it wasn't very well done.
Well, and the point is, we're so far beyond the propaganda videos to waste, and we only had an hour and a half in the session. So to waste half an hour with a 10-minute preamble and this complete waste of time video when we just want to rip it to shreds, like they should have given us just that time. And no questions, just what is your like as a researcher, you want to ask open-ended questions. What are your impressions of the draft curriculum? That's an open-ended question, not are you comfortable with it? Like you don't lead people who have something to say. You say, what are your impressions?
Well, it's not like we have never seen this government filibuster their own consultations or press conferences or anything like that. So at least they're kind of staying on brand, I guess. Lenora, you're a grandmother, you're an ex-teacher. What are you feeling here in all of this?
Well, Nate, I wasn't able to attend, and maybe I didn't these sessions. Maybe I didn't work hard enough to do it because I heard people talking about the sessions, and I was like, I need to stay focused. This is going to make me angrier to see and feel and experience this again. So I just thought I'm going to keep myself focused on something that I can do, because this has just been the most frustrating experience. And I just knew that I would come out, I would be more angry at the end. And when I hear this, I can feel it. I'm just boiling again, because it's and it's been set up this way to be a waste of time, maybe because they think we're going to just get tired. And that's what I've done, maybe because I didn't participate there, but I have done the online surveys for each of the subjects, because I wanted to make sure I understood this. And when I first looked at the curriculum, I went, oh no. And then, started to delve into it and thought, where do you even start with something like this? So when I hear that they're asking these kinds of questions, I just think, where do you go from here? Like,
there's still more sessions to go to, Lenora. There's still some that you can go to. I don't think I came out angry.
No, I didn't come out. Well, Andrea, we didn't come out angry because I forgot to tell you this, Nate. In the chat box during the session, I was like, does anybody want to debrief this session after me? Email me, text me, I'll set up my own Zoom call. So we had our own hour debrief after the session, and it was brilliant.
I mean, I have to say, like, there's two things just in the last minute of conversation right there that I think are a little bit problematic. When you're running a consultation session for engagement, and it has gotten to the point where people are like, I can't deal with it. I do not have the emotional bandwidth to deal with the amount of I'm going to use a word here, bullshit that you're going to serve up. that's not a great. Maybe it's me. I'm not a PR firm, but I feel like that's not a great engagement strategy, or certainly not an effective one. But the fact that a psychologist such as yourself provided a debrief for the people who were so upset about how the engagement session made them. I mean, I come from the background as a paramedic, and so hearing
that it was so.
I did my own critical incident stress debriefing, Nate.
That's insanity to me.
And Nate, I'm doing another one. I'm prepping, and it is not a UCP propaganda video. I am prepping an overview of what is wrong with the three parts of the curriculum that they insist on implementing: phys ed and wellness, language arts, and math. For a public engagement session where I will stay until the end and answer people's questions. And if I can't answer them, I will find it out and I will let them know, because this is so serious. Like what Lenora said about being tired of, not wanting to bother. I think that really reflects the general public. I didn't want to bother anymore, but I knew I had to, and I'm still going to try to get in a few sessions on the nights I'm not booked with other things, because literally the government is accepting feedback on this until the end of February. And then that's it. They are shutting off the engagement.
And the pilot, you're only piloting till the end of this month.
Yeah.
Everything's done.
Everything's done.
Not
So
done.
literally 13 weeks of piloting, 13 good weeks of piloting, part of the draft. And then these garbage engagement sessions there where someone told me not these PR firm ones, but the ones in the fall where they just shut off comments where people couldn't even comment. And now the government's going to get a tiny little report from, a few hundred people that are already exhausted and tired of beating our head against the wall. Like, it's time to just abort the mission and be done. Like, just say, we screwed up. Okay, let's hand it back to the teachers.
I did submit a 5-page analysis, paragraph by paragraph, in the chat to the note taker.
Actually, you know what, Andrea, that's what I recommend for people is if you've got comments that you want to put in, write your Word document before, then copy and paste it, because they can't keep up verbally with what people are saying. Mm-hmm. So copy, like literally, I'm going to go through the math and the language arts. Copy, paste, stick it in the comments.
Well, and that's how I feel about all of this. And I have chosen to spend my time with this group of people that in the rural. That's how I became more engaged with this when I knew I had to do something was, I reached out to Dustin and then Karen and Andrea and said, what can I do to continue to maintain my energy so that I can do something that is meaningful? And it's helped me because now I understand so much more about how ridiculous this curriculum is right at the top. So like it has to be dismantled completely. And like Andrea and what you've said, Angela, now I can write those comments and continue and talk to people about it. But I have to stay with people who are willing to work with this. And I chose not to be a part of that because I just wasn't willing to let my energy go there right now. And I will still, and I am submitting. So, yeah.
Talking about the frustration that people are having with this whole process. I'm a moderator on the Facebook group, and I can't tell you the number of posts that people have been wanting to post, where they, this trucker convoy has shown us the way that we need to do to get people to engage with this curriculum is to shut down the border. It is to do a bunch of stuff that is not right, and finally the government will do what we say. And I've had people message me saying the same thing because they're frustrated that the government is not listening to them. And they say, why don't we just drive a school bus down to the border? We'll block off all the lanes and then the government will listen to us. How about we drive some school buses into this middle of Edmonton? We'll shut down the streets. We'll make a big bunch of noise and then the government will listen to us. And this is not sarcastic comments I'm talking about or jokes. I'm talking about real people saying we should be doing this. And this is all over This is all over Facebook. It's all over Twitter. People contacting me. I can't post them into the Facebook group because that's not what we're about. But these are real people who are just tired of the whole thing, who are fed up with it, and they're starting to consider these quite
Direct
drastic
action.
actions.
Dustin, I'm getting emails and texts from people too, and Twitter messages saying the exact same thing. And it is frightening to me because we did a respectful rally at the Ledge in September. We did a respectful rally for public education down in downtown Calgary in December. And it is tragic that educated, kind, compassionate, caring people who care for their kids and are protesting things the right way are being completely ignored.
Or even writing. I know one of the things that we did was when we looked, not just before these consultations came out, we had a request. We sent it to the Department of Education asking for some information, and we weren't even acknowledged that we had sent. Like you're talking into a vacuum all of the time, and so you feel like you're at your wit's end, and it's so important. This is our future. These are our children. I just can't imagine anything that's more important that we, but it's bad.
One of the concerns that we've heard a lot of has been and we've certainly seen a lot of similar messaging and traffic on our social media here at the show. But one of the concerns that we've seen a lot of is that when you take a look at a lot of the people who have, I'm going to say, rejected the social norms that the groups that you're talking about have followed when you did the peaceful, respectful protests. The people that we're seeing attending a lot of these extreme events, some of which, and I really hate how hyperbolic this sounds, but they do meet the Canadian Criminal Code definition of terrorism. These events, not all of them, to be clear, and I'm not saying that everybody who's attending any of these freedom rallies are terrorists, but certainly some of the things that have happened do meet that criteria. There have been some people who have suggested that part of the reason why we're seeing a fairly consistent demographic engaging in these protests is because a lot of these people grew up through the Klein Era cuts, where we saw catastrophic changes inflicted on the education system. So I want to throw this particularly to Karen and Lenora. What do you make of? I mean, as two people who have been teachers for a while, let's say, as how I'm going to try to do that diplomatically. Do you think there's any truth to that? Do you have any concerns that if this curriculum goes ahead in the way that it is, that it's going to have long-term impacts, not only in regards to the quality of students that are produced through the education system, but how they choose to engage with society and how they choose to engage with government?
Can I rephrase that?
What's that?
Can I rephrase that?
Sure, go ahead.
Does it feel like it did before the Klein Era strikes 20 years ago?
I'll start with that. I was a classroom teacher when Klein was in power, and the money was so short that the vice principal that was in charge of the budget decided we each had this much money to spend on photocopying, and that's it. And I had a combined one. And I had a combined one too with a lot of behavior issues. And of course, it's a big difference what they can do in grade 1 and grade 2. So sometimes you just needed to separate them. And I would just sit there at night with my head in my hands going, okay, what can I do those kids have to stay in their seats because of the behavior problems, and I can't use any photocopying. And it was just terrible. It was very stressful for the teachers, for me in particular, but for any teacher. And then I just cannot believe, I can't imagine the stress that teachers are under nowadays. And you dump this ridiculous, unteachable curriculum on top of it. It's going to be a disaster just for the school system, and of course for the kids, because they're not going to be it's not teachable.
Lenora, you got anything to add to that?
I do, actually. I actually wasn't in the classroom during that period. I had left teaching to work in the not-for-profit sector. And but I will say something that I have thought a little bit about this, and I did have a chance. Most recently, I moved to a community, and I did a little bit of substitute teaching just for a little while when I was making my way into this new community. And I did see a difference in how educators were coping by this time. And this is more recently, perhaps. They had reverted back to some of the practices that I had experienced as a child, in school, some of the workbooks and stuff. And that's not the curriculum that I was engaged with when I was teaching. And the actual curriculum that we had, that was actually a curriculum the progressive conservatives had created, was it had to be revised. That's what you do, is you revise curriculum because the world changes. But it was something that if you had the resources, and you weren't tired, it was a curriculum that at least it was about inclusiveness, and it was about problem solving, and it was about critical thinking, and it was about innovation, and it was about going forward, and it was about diversity. It had all of those things in it. And I could still, and sometimes as a teacher who's been away from the classroom for a while, I want to go back to that, because it was a curriculum where kids were excited, because it made space for kids to be curious, and it allowed kids to learn in ways, and there was the money when I was teaching, there was more of the money to support those students who had diverse needs, and you could meet their needs. And when I looked at this curriculum, I just went, whoa, it's like 180 degrees, and I can just see going back so much further where we'll be doing more of the things that, like I said, like you'll be working more on workbooks, because that's how this curriculum is created. It's to have kids sitting in their desks and to be given information and just take it in. It doesn't matter if it means anything to you or if you understand it, memorize it. So that's sad. And I think for me, that's the part that makes it so difficult. And I know teaching has changed, and it's difficult and it's hard because the money isn't there. But if you have a good curriculum, at least you have something. That's how I see it.
One of the things that we've certainly heard from teachers that we've spoken to, and Andrea, you're still substitute teaching, and we saw after our conversation the influx of private messages from teachers that were absolutely heartbreaking. And one of the big concerns that I have about this curriculum is we have so many teachers who are at the breaking point, or who have already gone past the breaking point and have had to choose to exit the profession. The Teachers Association just released some information recently that said 30% of teachers were looking for an exit strategy from teaching in the next year. So not only which is not going to make the situation any better, and by no means am I criticizing or faulting those teachers, because they've had to work under untenable conditions for way too long, but to foist a curriculum that is so catastrophic on them while they're navigating all of the other really, really bad things that are happening. What's your reaction to that, Andrea?
I'm worried about the backlash, actually, about the vitriol and the vilifying of the teachers, being told that they just need to suck it up and do it, which they've been doing for 20 years, and they've been getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and there's nowhere else to go. That's it. We're at the end of that rope there. It needs to be said that for the system to work as it is right now, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of parents say it's probably not working very great right now, which is why there's so much pushback against teachers and so much vitriol, is the system's broken. And it has been for a while, and those gaps have been filled in by teachers for a long time, and they don't have anything left to fill those gaps with anymore. I'm worried that they are going to get thrown under the bus more than they already have. Like, it feels like they're already under the bus, but there's more room under there. So I don't know what, if this was being run as a company where a central office was the head office, and then the school boards are like that middle management franchise side of things, this is a company with over 50,000 employees and 750,000 clients. But they're running it like a bootstrap startup where everybody just needs to scramble and work 24/7. And it's not tenable, it's not sustainable, and it's not smart. If you want the best education system in the world, treat it like that. Put the talent where it shines. Make sure that you have phys ed and wellness experts delivering the phys ed and wellness. Make sure that you have math experts. Don't take the shop teacher who's been teaching shop for 25 years and throw him in a junior high language arts social studies class and just feed him to the wolves, because from the parent's perspective, he's a bad teacher. But from our perspective, he's an amazing teacher who isn't being utilized properly or supported or anything. If you took that to another company that has 50,000 employees and you just started willy-nilly putting warm bodies where they needed to be, it wouldn't function properly. That's what we have. And then we're going to put instruction manuals in there that will cause it to fail even faster.
I'm
I'd
actually
just like
gonna,
to
oh, go ahead,
I'd just like to
Dustin.
point out that Jason Kenney is not doing the education sector any favors. He is continually degrading teachers and the ATA. Him and the entire caucus are always trying to push this. And that narrative comes down to saying, well, people will hear that and they'll say, well, that must mean that teachers are bad. That's the teacher's fault. And it is constantly happening. It's right in your face that it's happening, and it really shouldn't be. We shouldn't be allowing this to happen. We should have a premier that decides that education is important and supports it and says, you know what, yes, I hear you, and I'm going to help you fix it by providing funding, by providing resources, by doing what needs to happen so that we can have a good education system rather than forcing down a curriculum that was developed in less than a year, right? It's just ridiculous. And I'm not even a teacher, I'm a parent, and I can see this happening.
One of the arguments that I always like to throw out to see what people's reaction to it is, and I've used this in regards to a lot of different issues, is the idea that even if you don't see the moral imperative, that in this situation, teachers are wildly under-resourced. They are working under incredibly difficult conditions. Even if you don't see the moral imperative to support them and to try to better those conditions, even if you don't see the moral imperative to make sure that our kids get an education that is going to prepare them for not just the new Alberta economy, but the world economy, all of those things, even if you don't see that, by putting out a dumpster fire curriculum on top of teachers who are already looking for exit strategies, you're going to cost people a hell of a lot of money. Because what's going to end up happening is the quality of those students is going to contribute to a lower quality economy. There's going to be more social supports that are probably required. To dig the education system out of the hole that they're currently burning into the ground is going to require a significant expenditure of cost. So is there an argument to be made, even if you ignore all of that stuff, just on the dollars and cents,
this thing needs to be
The
put
ROI.
away? Yeah, exactly.
ROI, the return on investment. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, and let's look at it. So the 2018 draft curriculum had over 32,000 Albertans contribute to it before it was even started, and some during. It was written over by 350 experts. It was reviewed by community partners and stakeholders. I did a review of it in 2017 of the wellness curriculum, and I'm like, this is garbage. It looked like it was written by a high school phys ed teacher who has no idea about youth health and wellness. And they took that year, went back to the experts, and changed it. So when I reviewed it again, it was great. So now we have this $64 million draft that is right there, beautifully written. that was meant to be piloted in 2019. So right now we are already 3 years behind. And at the time, things were stressful for teachers. Now things are impossible for teachers. And then they're going to dump this garbage, I almost swore, this garbage draft on them that everyone knows.
I said bullshit earlier, so you can take some latitude.
Mine was stronger than that, Nate.
Okay.
You get my drift. So yes, this is costing us, it is going to cost us millions. And if it hasn't already cost us more to repair the damage that is happening. It is yes, people should be worried about the dollars. Another thing I wanted to tag on. So I teach a comprehensive school health course for pre-service teachers. So these are teachers in their 4th year, ready to go in the fall. I have, well, I can't say my office because we're all online, but I have students wanting Zoom meetings with me and crying and saying, I don't think I can do this. They're like, Angela, you're teaching us about comprehensive school health. And then we look at this new curriculum and it has nothing to do with what you're saying. And I'm like, I know, because this curriculum completely ignores the last 20 years of educational research and best practices. And then the government's bragging. We've got financial literacy. We've got consent. Oh, now we've put body image. So last year, I raised the flag about this curriculum going to contribute to eating disorders, which is the deadliest mental health illness. And so congratulations, they took out the word weight, but they still left in the word measurement, so they can still measure bodies. And they literally tacked the word body image in quotes in kindergarten. So to the public, they're getting, oh, we're talking about body image. But for a curriculum expert who studies it, it's bullshit. They've tacked it on with no context, no resources, no evidence-based practices, nothing. And then I looked at the financial wellness. The financial literacy part is written very, very, very well. It's written well for high school. For high school. And
in our session, Angela, in our session, we had a high school teacher who's a phys ed specialist who's done the sports performance extra training on top, who also happens to teach finance. Her curricular outcomes, she could pick them out and be like, they just got scooped into grade 2. That's all that happened.
So grade 11 struggles with these ideas and it got scooped into elementary. Do we need our kindergarten kids having credit cards and debit cards for show and tell? Do we want our grade 5 kids doing a family budget? Do we need our grade 6 kids learning about, like, training their parents how to invest in RRSPs, mutual funds, and stocks? That's why I have a financial advisor.
According to Kenney, we do need our kids to teach the parents how to do that.
Yeah. It is absolutely beyond, it is beyond ridiculous. They are lying to the public. Oh, we've got body image in there. No, you don't. And Andrea, I really liked the analogy you gave. So and Andrea gave this great metaphor of, she's going to IKEA and wants to buy some bedroom furniture. So she buys the box, gets home, and the instructions are how to build a bookshelf. Well, I'm going to take that a bit further. There are no instructions. This says, build a bookshelf. Good luck to you.
That reminds me, one of the facilitators asked me how it could, like, what could be rewritten, what could be do. And I stopped and I asked him, and I was like, are you asking me how to write on the patio instructions, how to get a bed set out of this? Is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm. Like, you're asking, is that what? And he's like, no. Yeah, you are. You're asking how to write on a separate set of instructions, how to get something different out of it. And that's not cool.
One of the things that these facilitators in these discussions came up with, he says, okay, I'm hearing you. So what you're saying is that there's too much content. So if it was to cut down, that would make it a lot better, a lot stronger. And I said, no, it's not what we're saying. We're saying that this is 100% garbage. And if you take away 50% of the garbage, you're still left with garbage. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just terrible. And I hope you take that to the government. I'm sure he'll have to paraphrase it, but that is what I told him.
I keep asking myself if why they hate us so much to do this to Albertans. Seriously, that's how it feels.
It's a great question.
I'd like to ask. Actually, I started a letter to the editor thinking, well, maybe I could have somebody answer that, because that's how it feels right now. It feels like they will, I don't know who they asked, where they got any of their information, because the reason I came on this panel today, I wasn't going to, but on Saturday, I stopped and talked to a neighbor, and he doesn't have grandchildren, but he works in the oil and gas industry. And I told him what we were doing in K-6 starting in September. And we had an hour-long conversation. He was just flabbergasted, because he was like we're going backwards. And he said, we needed to fix some things, but you can fix things. And we had a curriculum, like you said, Angela, we had a curriculum in 2018 that had addressed many of these things already that had changed. We had a not bad curriculum before that, because it had some things in it that were good. And he said, this will make our industry, oh my goodness. He said, you're just gonna have people who will be able to do one thing and one thing only. And he said, we can't work with people like that. He said, we already have people, who need extra help, but this is just untenable. He said, I don't know how we're going to be able to work with people who don't know how to think and know the difference between things, or why if something goes wrong, or if they're using an algorithm, let's say in math, which one to pick for, and if they're, having to problem solve, or, whatever that is, where you have to troubleshoot. That's what I'm looking for. Troubleshoot. He said they won't know where to begin with, because they have had, when we were and I just told him a little bit about it. I didn't tell him all the bad stuff, because I didn't have time. We were just talking, between shoveling snow up here. But it was like he just couldn't believe it, that we were going to do this, and that he will have these students. And when I was in the classroom, I always said to myself, I don't know what my students in grade 4 or grade 5 will need to know, because I can't predict 20 years out. But I do know that they will need certain foundational things, ways of being able to be with each other, to solve problems, where to get their information. And they need those foundational things. I won't argue that at all. But this curriculum says that what you need to know is here now. And I don't know, they haven't thought further than the year 4 years down the road, let alone 20 or 30 when these kids are graduating. We won't know what they know, because it's like, for me, and I'm going to stop after this, because this is the last thing I want to say about it. It was like they set up 6 garbage cans, and they went like this, and they threw them in, and there's no sequence, there's gaps. It's just terrible. But they had nothing. I don't know where they got what they threw in, because it doesn't line with any of the skills Canada says that our students will need in the 21st century. It doesn't align with that to begin with. So where they got the stuff that they threw in, I don't know where it came from. This didn't come from that person that I talked to who is in oil and gas.
Lenora, it doesn't even align with what is on the Alberta Education website that was there before Adriana LaGrange was Minister of Education. She doesn't even know what is on the Alberta Education website.
Oh, I know that. And I actually took a look at the ministerial order, and I know that's, it's like, what's our vision? They have this vision that someone wrote for them, and you try and match that up with what's in that curriculum. Well, that's another thing I won't do. I started to, and I thought, well, here's another waste of time.
That's the bedroom set. It's great, but the instructions aren't for that.
Well, and can we just go a little bit deeper than that? Okay. So I was raised Catholic, and I looked at the ministerial order, and six of the virtues listed in the first paragraph of the ministerial order are directly from the Catholic Catechism. So we have a Catholic premier and a Catholic minister of education. And trust me, I have Catholic education is fantastic when parents choose to send their children there. That is great. However, to have 6 of the 7 Catholic values listed in the first paragraph of the Ministerial Order of Learning is frightening to me.
Problematic.
Very problematic.
That you would be able to find in their curriculum. That you can find in there. You can see shades of that throughout the curriculum, how they are addressing. Oh yeah, you can see that.
Yes, virtues everywhere.
Okay,
I think
so
I was just going to say, I think it's worth highlighting is because one of the things that I keep coming back to is, as you guys are all talking, is the reality that what you're talking about, by and large, are pedagogical flaws. They are curriculum development flaws. They are philosophical flaws. And as if those things aren't bad enough, there's still a staggering amount of factual errors that exist in this curriculum.
So
we've moved on from that.
Oh, Nate, that's just the low-hanging fruit, the factual errors, right?
Teacher can fix that part. That just takes Google. That's not the that's not
and Andrea, that's the hard thing too. So this is what frightens me is if teachers don't know what to do, we Google it. We get our information. But if teachers aren't getting their information from the evidence-based best practices and research-based resources, then what do we have? Like in terms of, like, my area is wellness. So if they are not using the evidence-based resources to write this curriculum, teachers are going to make shit up and they're going to go with what their background is. And, I stopped teaching because I didn't know how to teach health and wellness. That's why I went into comprehensive school health, so I could be a better teacher. It turns out now I teach beginning teachers, but we have this wealth of knowledge behind us that is amazing to share, and it is 100% being cut out. It's gone.
Well, and when I've talked to people about this, the first reaction that I get from people is that teachers will teach what is, that's so true, that teachers will ignore it and they'll still teach what's important because that's who we are, right? That's how the public sees us. That's the perception, is that teachers won't teach this bad curriculum. They'll teach what's important. And I'm like,
when they're running on fumes, not when they're.
And that's not only when you're not running on fumes, but it's the expectation. And there's this fear for me. If I was in the classroom, I'd be afraid that someone would be watching to see that I was following this curriculum. So you're not, and it is the law. Once you mandate a curriculum, it is the law. So this perception, and I wonder if that's what people are banking on, is that teachers wouldn't let this happen. We have faith in teachers.
I think you're right. I think you're right. People are banking on, teachers won't let this happen. Well, I have to say now teachers have spoken out. There's a 99% non-confidence vote in the Minister of Education. There is the Deans of Education not supporting it. There's the curriculum analysis website. The experts have said everything. This literally is now on the parents and grandparents. Thank you, grandmas, for being here. We need mad moms, pissed off dads, angry, scared grandparents to stand up and say, enough. There is no implementation September 22. You re-engage with teachers and that is it. Like, we need the parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, elders, knowledge keepers, stand up and say, done.
What's happening in the background is that the school trustees and the boards and the central offices are scrambling to figure out how to implement it. They are trying to find a way to make this work because they know it's coming regardless of what we have to say. And from what I can tell from my board chair is that maybe there's some wiggle room on getting all K-6 landing at the exact same time, and maybe they'll think about rolling it out one at a time, but that's like a pipe dream at this point. But they're all scrambling to try and find a way to make this happen in September because there isn't a choice. When it's a program of studies, that's the curriculum. You are breaking the law if you're not teaching it. So to rely on teachers to literally go against their terms of service to do this is a huge gamble, because that's their livelihood they're gambling with. That's their ability to feed their family. If they get fired for not teaching the curriculum, that's a thing. It's only happened once. And it was that guy who was a Holocaust denier in central Alberta. Like, that's the bar here.
Well, and
I wouldn't put it past the government to be putting people in classrooms to make sure that the curriculum is being taught the way they want it taught.
Can you promise standardized tests?
Yeah,
It's
this government has no morals about anything except doing what it is that they want to do, right?
Someone brought up in our group that, like when we did the engagement session, someone brought up that this curriculum is very much open to interpretation. So let's go to body image, okay? Kindergarten body image. All right. So one teacher could make it, an extensive, like embodied experience with lots of experiential things about, how kids feel in their own skin. Another teacher could read a book about body image and say, check, done.
That was a trustee.
Yeah, that was a school trustee who said that. And it's very true. And yes, we want our teachers to be creative. We want our teachers, to do interesting things and engage their students and get to know their students. But if it's this broad and this open-ended, it is going to be boring. There's going to be way too much variety in how people interpret it. I mean, Andrea building a bookshelf would be different than me building a bookshelf. I actually built a bookshelf. I built a storage cart with the instructions and still managed to get the shelves on the outside of it and had to redo it. So even with instructions, people get it wrong.
That's why you have mentors. That's why you have people who have done it before working with you. That's why you have someone in the building who's a veteran, who's an expert, so that anybody who's doing it for the first time can lean on them. That's not going to be a thing here.
So when I would go through this curriculum at different stages, I literally, and this is one of the critical flaws that I find with it as well, is that there isn't any clear, you don't, like, I read that there were 600 outcomes over here, and then I went back and I was like, well, what is an outcome? Because there isn't a clear picture about what it looks like when you have, and that's the problem, because we can't measure half of what's in here. So you're right. I can interpret it this way. The teacher over here is going to interpret it differently. And I don't know what's going to happen when we have the standardized test and they have to do multiple choice. That'll be totally, and so nobody knows what it is. And I don't know how many times, and I think I know curriculum. I've spent enough. I have a curriculum background. I would sit there and go, what? And I would be phoning Karen or phoning my friends over here saying, what does this mean? Like, what is this? Like, seriously, as an educator, I don't know how much time teachers are going to be sitting there going, what does this mean even? And it's narrow, it's narrow focus, and yet you can interpret it in many different ways, because you can't tell what's an outcome with the way they've written it, because they don't have a clear vision of what each of the sections look like. And so teachers will spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the government is looking for.
Yes, I want to say that as a teacher, as a retired teacher, this curriculum completely fails to communicate what children should know and be able to do, which is what the guiding framework says it's for. It's a format that no teacher has ever seen before. It's just a column of things under knowledge and a column of things under skills and procedures. There's no document to go with it to explain how to use it. That's come up many, many times. Well, is the stuff in knowledge stuff that kids have to memorize and be able to regurgitate on a test? Because we're assuming, since the guiding framework says, what children know, and there's a knowledge column, well, I guess that's what it is. A lot of the stuff in the knowledge column seems to be destined for teachers. It's like the definition of tier 2 words. Do they need to know the definition for a multiple choice test? Like, the document itself is so badly constructed. And then there's what Janice Aubrey called misalignments. So across from the knowledge and the understanding and the skills and procedures, you would think it would kind of line up, but it doesn't. That what's in the knowledge may not be what they're talking about in the skills and procedures at all. Like, it's just an impossible document.
this is like having a red seal tile setter, and I've known a bunch. They're amazing humans. Is trying to explain to a potential client that the book they have in their shopping cart is probably not the best choice. So this red seal tile setter is like, there's good parts in that book, like, but the professor who wrote that they're an interior designer, not a tile setter. So I mean, they're famous. They're on HGTV. They've got their name on the cover. They've got name recognition. They've been in interior designing long enough to know how to install tile-ish. And it looks like a great book, but that red seal tile setter is looking at it and going, those instructions for using the thin set, that's going to make your floor fail, and you're going to end up ripping it out and starting over. So do you buy the book because of the name recognition of somebody who's friends with the publisher, or do you go to the red seal tile setter who looks you in the eye and says, that's going to fail, you're going to have to rip the floor out? Because what's happening here is red seal level veteran experts are making public statements. They're publishing analyses. They're writing letters to the editor. They are protesting. They are screaming as loud as they can. And the government's like, yeah, but that guy's on TV, so.
And here, I'm going to tag on to that, Andrea. So this is really important. Exactly what Lenora, Karen, Dustin, Andrea are saying is that the general public and parents are not curriculum experts. You do not have, like, I've got, my 5-year BFA BEd, and then I've got 13 years post-secondary. This is what I've done for the last 20 years. I can read this curriculum and say, holy hell, what's going on? For someone, but I'm not a math expert. I cannot look at the math section and say what's going on here. That is not my area. So I can't give feedback. I can't give excellent feedback on what's wrong with the math draft because that's not my area. So if I didn't have any education, any post-secondary education behind me, I couldn't read this, and therefore I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know what feedback to give. So the government is asking feedback from parents who can't read the manual the way the experts can. And then they're vilifying us experts and making things up and saying, oh, they gave approval for this. I can guarantee that if someone asked Adriana LaGrange, you changed this according to Dr. Angela Grace's review. Oh yeah, we put in body image. Oh great, they put in body image. And I'm like, no, you didn't listen to the underlying issues. And so what's happening is literally we've got, wording changes and a little bit here and a little bit there. Somebody did this brilliant curriculum analysis website with the current curriculum, the 2018 draft, the 2021 March draft, and the changes they made online December draft. And so you can see the comparisons there. But again, the general public isn't going to be able to go to that website and see what they've done. So like I said, I'm going to do a little engagement session and just describe what this looks like. But honestly, like I could, that's why I hired a person to put in my tile floor, because I don't have a clue. I don't have time to learn. I don't know, that color looks good enough, right? And that's what's happening with this curriculum. It's literally post-it notes by well-meaning people who don't really understand the depth of how incredibly damaging this is going to be to Alberta's future. And yeah, I'm going to cry because that's where I'm at right now with frustration.
And it's one thing to look at this, and we can talk about what's wrong with it. But the bottom line is the government shouldn't have put us in this position to begin with, right? The government has all these resources. They have millions of dollars to be able to throw at this kind of thing, right? And to say, all right, parents, how about you tell us how to fix this curriculum? That's ridiculous. government, Alberta education, it's your job to know how to fix this. It's not my job as a parent to know how to fix this, right? Why should I have to know how to fix this? I mean, I do computer programming. I shouldn't have to know how to do social studies or how to do physical education in order to say if this is good or not. The government needs to step up and fix everything that they've broken and how they started doing it wrong in the first place. Right?
Dustin, this government broke something that was already fixed. What is the end game of this bloody disgraceful curriculum and the way that teachers are being vilified? Like I've been doing a media timeline of the curriculum, of changes to education, and it is appalling how this government is cutting, like it literally is death by 1,000 cuts.
I find it ironic that a lot of these convoy protesters are protesting because they want the freedom to go back to work. They all just want to go back to work. They say, this is why we're doing this, so we can go back to work. And they haven't really done a good job of saying that, well, I want to go back to work because I'm tired of homeschooling my kids on Zoom because it's so much work, right? I had to, for the longest time, I had to be working with my son on Zoom. And there's a lot of stuff we have to do. I have to make sure he stays on task while I'm trying to do my work. I have to make sure that he's engaged all the time, that he's able to do stuff. And to say, well, teachers get paid for that, that's fine. They should be able to do it 100%. Well, that's just a bunch of BS, right? So for parents to say, well, I want to know exactly what my kids are learning. I want to have say into what they're doing, but I don't want to be involved in it. That's ridiculous, right? If you're a parent and you want your children to learn stuff, right, you have to be involved in this consultation process, and you have to be involved and say, you know what, this isn't right. Otherwise, you can just take your kids, you can sit in front of a computer, and you can babysit them all day, rather than trying to get a real education from a real education expert like a teacher.
Now, let's not knock homeschooling. Homeschooling works for so many people. And part of the reason homeschooling works for so many people is that we've decided that public education has like one shaped box, and not every kid fits in that shaped box. Some kids need a different box. They need to build their own box. But we can't do that in an underfunded public education system where my daughter has 29 kids in her grade 5 class and 16 of them are boys, and the morale is pretty low. Like that box is very limited when you're in those constraints. Homeschool does open that up. And for those who can do that, that's amazing. But to have constantly thrown at you in comment sections that, well, if you don't like it, homeschool, like, we have to have that existential question of, do Albertans still want a public education system? Is that where we need to take the conversation? Do we need to start at, do we still have this as a societal value? Because if we do, we are undermining it and breaking it, and people need to get loud. But if that's not a value anymore, if that's not how this is going to work in the future, then fine, dismantle it and give everybody their tax money back, and we'll just figure it out, I guess. Like, we're at that point where an existential question of, does society still value public education as a foundation for society? Or are we over that now? Is that where we're at? Because teachers kind of definitely feel like more people are over it and our work isn't valued anymore.
That's a scary question that I don't know the answer to.
I did that to you last time too, Nick.
I know. It's always dark with it.
But if we don't have that conversation, then what are we trying to fix? What are we working so hard to save? If the overall if the overwhelming opinion of Albertans is teachers aren't worth money anymore.
That's it. I'm going to tag off on that, Andrea, as well. In looking back at, I'm going to go back to Jason Kenney's campaign promises for public education for education. And you mentioned about class sizes. That was one of them in there. Oh, we're going to look at class sizes. I don't know about you, but I've seen nothing about class sizes anywhere
They removed
whatsoever.
They specifically, publicly, and purposely removed that measure.
Oh,
Yep.
they removed it.
It's not tracked anymore.
No.
So that's one way to solve the problem, I guess. Just eliminate all of the data
No.
tracking.
No,
That's not
yeah.
another theme that we've seen, is it? I know that we're running way long, so I just want to give everybody the opportunity. We'll go backwards from how we started. I just want to give everybody the opportunity. Is there anything else that you wish that? And I'm gonna ask you to target this specifically to parents. Is there anything else that you wish parents would hear? Is there anything that you want to reiterate that parents should hear? Lenora, what do you got?
Well, I'm really struck on Andrea's last question, because I think maybe that's what we need to ask parents is, what do we value in education? Do we value public education? To me, it's hitting me here. It's something that I hadn't thought about. I think that's a question that we need to ask parents to wrestle with, because this is what it's about.
Okay. Karen?
I'm going to assume that the parents with kids in the system now support public school, and just ask them to start listening to the teachers and the experts that have already expressed an opinion. And they don't know what's coming because they haven't looked at it. And if you did look at it, as one of our people said, like, you wouldn't know how to interpret it anyway. And I think they care, but the school system has never been attacked on the level of the curriculum before. You know, they've had money cuts, but it's never been attacked on the level of the curriculum. And why would we expect it to be? So they just don't know. They need to start listening.
Okay. Dustin?
So I'm a parent, and much like everybody else here, but I'm just about exclusively as a parent. I don't have the teaching education background. So I say this to parents: get off your butts and do something. Don't just assume that teachers are going to be taking care of everything just like they always do, right? It is time for parents to really take control of this and tell the government that it has to stop. And what that means is getting involved, getting your hands dirty, starting to complain, starting to bitch to people about it, and tell them that this cannot happen. Shake people up, really get involved, not just on social media, not just on Twitter and Facebook, but talk to your friends, talk to your family, go to your MLA's office, pound on the door and say, this is just wrong, it has to stop, right? There are protests being arranged, peaceful protests, not people parking school buses at certain places, right? Peaceful ones, legal ones that are being arranged so we can have these voices heard. But it needs to be parents involved, like a whole lot of parents, not just one or two or 100, but thousands of parents come together and say that we're not going to take this. Because if not, we're just going to have a terrible job dealing with this, and it will be on us. It won't be on the teachers, it'll be on the parents who wanted this. And that's not something that I want to have to deal with for the next 4 years.
Dr. Grace?
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that too. And that reiterates what I said near the beginning, is it really is up to the parents now. And so play into Jason Kenney's handle of parental choice and declare, you know, public education is important. Curriculums last 30 to 40 years. The majority of the impact is going to be on children that aren't even born yet. And that is really frightening. So it really is up to the parents. And you know what, if you don't have time to educate yourself, we're all tired now. The SOS website, the ATA has information and ready to fill out form letters that you just simply put in your name, put in your address, and it automatically gets sent to your MLA. It is easy to do this. The other thing you can do is go to the Alberta Education website, fill out the survey saying, I do not want this draft, return it to the educators. Like, till the end of February is our last push for this. And then we're going to have to start protesting. And I'm going to share a vision I have. of school walkouts, parents picking up their kids, everyone wearing red for ed on April 1st, because the way this government is treating public education is, I'm going to say it, a fucking joke.
Andrea, I know you're going to leave us on a high note.
Okay, I'm going to ask the dark questions, but I'm still here. I'm not gone. I didn't quit. I'm still fighting. I'm still advocating. I'm still holding space for everyone that I can hold space for so that they can make it through another day. I am going into classrooms and I am subbing. I am advocating as best as I can. But if this goes through, this grade 6 curriculum for PE is going to kill my daughter's even small urge to stay physically active. There are going to be 210 points of physical education and wellness that she's going to have to achieve by the end of grade 6. 6 of them use verbs that will require moving.
I'm
The
just going to
rest
tag
are-
on here too.
The rest
Yeah.
are sitting in your desk doing financial, nutrition, and consent, and health of pregnancies. So my grade 6 daughter, I looked at her and I ran through what her grade 6 gym class is going to look like next year. And she gave me a really big sigh. And she asked me why the government would make gym sitting time. And I don't have an answer for her, because it feels like they're designing this to cause the backlash to land on the teachers and make it all fail. Oops, sorry. That's a substitute teacher call. I'm going to get bombarded by like 12 of them now. So
Okay.
I'm just going to go on mute.
No, I'm just going to add on to that. If we think we have a child, a youth mental health crisis now, because like due to COVID and the pandemic, this curriculum is going to make it significantly worse. Be prepared for your children to have eating disorders. Be prepared for your children to be told to go be by themselves if they have feelings. Be prepared for zero inclusion. Be prepared for racism. Be prepared for otherism. Be prepared for your child to feel like they don't belong anywhere.
Unless you have a teacher who's going to go against their contract of delivering the curriculum as desired.
There's that high note I was looking for. I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time to chat tonight. I want to thank all of you for this has been an ongoing advocacy nightmare, and the bandwidth and emotional energy that it has taken from all of you and your families and your loved ones and all of the things really can't be overstated. So that's all I got. I just want to say thank you, and we're going to continue to do everything that we can to try to amplify all of the things on this, because as much as there are no shortage of things that our current provincial government is doing that are very, very bad, this has got to be at the top.
Sorry.
And there's and apparently, if you're looking for substitute work, there's there's lots of options. Thank you guys again so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Nate.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here at The Breakdown, we would love it if you swung by our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab and signed up for a small monthly sponsorship of the work that we're trying to do here. It is because of the support that we receive from our Patreon sponsors that we're able to continually up our game, and it is tremendously appreciated. So I want to throw a big thank you out to them, and you can go ahead and visit that website and join and support us as well, because we need all the help we can get. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for listening and being part of these important conversations. And we will see you next time on The Breakdown.